lately. My spouse, Michael, who is slightly older than me, unexpectedly requested that I leave our home because my parents were living with us. His abrupt request stunned and confused me. He even threatened to divorce me if I refused his wishes. He had grown distant in recent weeks, and our partnership had encountered some difficulties. Even though I was paying for all of our living expenses, which totaled $2,900 per month, he appeared to ignore it. I was completely taken aback when he mentioned that his parents would be uncomfortable with my presence, a reason that made little sense to me. However, I agreed to his demand, packed my belongings, and left. I noticed a sense of relief in him as I did this. I contacted a resale shop right after I left to manage my belongings. My name is Sarah, and I live with my husband, Michael. We met through mutual friends and quickly developed a connection. One of our first encounters involved him sharing his desire to become a voice actor, which piqued my interest given his charming voice. After exchanging phone numbers, we started spending more time together and eventually got into a relationship. However, we never formally acknowledged it. I was fresh out of college at the time and was drawn to the idea of being in a relationship with someone more mature. It felt like entering a more mature phase of my life. My best friend Laura was concerned about the age difference because Michael is 4 years older, but I reassured her that many relationships thrive despite age differences. I truly enjoyed Michael's company, and he appeared to reciprocate my feelings, so I didn't see any reason to worry. After about 2 years of dating, the topic of marriage arose. I had already introduced him to my parents and explained our age difference, which piqued their interest in him. Throughout all of our discussions about the future, I often wondered when he would propose. He eventually did, on a casual evening at my apartment. It wasn't a grand romantic gesture, but it was genuine and represented a new beginning for us. Michael proposed in such a casual manner that I simply responded cheerfully, "Sure, let's marry." It reflected our laid-back approach to life, which suited both of us perfectly. Following the proposal, we made trips to see each other's families. However, I didn't get along with Michael's relatives. Their home was cluttered with what appeared to be antiques, though I suspected they were just replicas. When I first met Michael's parents, they were dressed in expensive branded clothing and ostentatious jewelry, resembling a wealthy couple. It became clear that our tastes and values were worlds apart. Michael, "'s mother even made a disparaging remark about my appearance, which shocked me. But I told myself that as long as Michael and I were happy, I didn't need to interact much with his family. After our wedding, we moved into a condo, but Michael appeared unusually anxious. One day, he asked about a woman in a blue dress from our wedding. Confused? I mentioned that there were several guests dressed in blue, but I wasn't sure who he meant. He clarified that he was asking about the person who had given a speech as my best friend. I confirmed that he meant Laura, noting that she was wearing a blue dress. Michael's interests appeared odd, and when he inquired about her, explaining that he had recently seen someone who resembled her and remembered her speech, I found his sudden interest in Laura perplexing. But before I could delve deeper, he simply laughed it off and went back to his room. Later, Laura called with some exciting news. Her boyfriend was planning to return to the United States next year. They had been dating since high school and knew each other since elementary school. Laura's boyfriend had moved away during middle school, despite their long and close relationship. Despite the distance, they stayed in touch through letters. They reunited in high school, and he confessed his love for her. I used to enjoy hearing Laura's romantic stories. Her boyfriend had been working abroad for several years, having been assigned to an international branch, after spending time in the United States. Despite the distance, their relationship remained strong, bolstered by frequent communication. Curiously, I asked Laura if she thought her boyfriend might propose when he returned, hinting at a possible wedding. Laura teased me for jumping ahead, but she insisted that I prepare to give a memorable speech at her wedding, just as she had at mine. We had a light-hearted moment over tea, reveling in the ease of our friendship, where we could discuss anything and rely on each other's support. During this time, I started noticing changes in Michael's routine. He was getting home increasingly late. When I mentioned his late hours, he responded that just because we were married did not mean he shouldn't work. Although he was still pursuing his dream of becoming a voice actor, The reality was that he worked a variety of part-time jobs to fund his classes, with little immediate return. As a result, I shouldered all of our living expenses, making it difficult for us to save any money. Over time, it became clear that Michael was unwilling to sacrifice his dreams for the sake of our family's financial stability. My concerns grew as his working hours became longer, fearing that his part-time job required too much overtime. When I expressed my concerns, implying that they might be overworking him, Michael quickly dismissed me, insisting that he had everything under control and that the extra money was beneficial. His curt response abruptly ended the conversation, and I noticed a change in how he addressed me. He no longer used my name, only referring to me as impersonal as you. This subtle change added a layer of coldness to our interactions, raising my concerns about our future as a couple. When Michael and I married, I expected him to continue speaking to me with kindness. But after our wedding, his demeanor changed dramatically. His once soothing, deep voice became grating and harsh, which I suspected was due to overdrinking. Given that he was an aspiring voice actor, this lifestyle seemed detrimental to his vocal health, and I was concerned for his well-being. Despite my concerns, Michael seemed unconcerned and began to distance himself from me, frequently ignoring me completely at home. Given my personal concerns, my friend Laura contacted me around this time, asking to discuss something important. I suggested we meet in a private karaoke booth so we could talk uninterrupted. Laura appeared to be particularly cautious about her room selection, choosing one with a clear view of the staff from the door. Curious, I asked her why she had chosen this specific location. She explained that she had felt someone following her since she quit her job a month ago, and that choosing a visible room allowed the staff to keep an eye out for any suspicious individuals who might be lurking nearby. I inquired if she had contacted the police. Laura responded that she had tried, but without making any physical contact or direct threats. The police were limited in their ability to assist. She planned to discuss the situation with her boyfriend when he returned in a month. But in the meantime, she wanted to confide in someone nearby. Laura hadn't seen her stalker, and she was clearly too terrified to tell if it was a man or woman. I promised to help her keep an eye out, hoping to identify the person following her through my observations. I was shocked to discover that the person following Laura was none other than my husband, Michael. Despite his claims of working late, he had been spending his evenings lurking near Laura's workplace, following her after his shifts were finished. This revelation was a heavy burden, and while I had intended to talk about my strained relationship with Michael, uncovering his disturbing behavior became the first priority. The situation was far more serious than I had anticipated, forcing me to deal with both my deteriorating marriage and the safety of my dear friend. The day I discovered Michael was stalking Laura was a profound shock, a betrayal that shattered my faith completely. He followed my best friend with a creepy, unsettling grin, which was chilling. I had loved and married this man, but in that moment, my emotions vanished, leaving a cold void where affection once existed. I immediately informed Laura of the discovery, and we took swift action to ensure her safety. She received assistance from her co-workers. Arrangements were made for her to be discreetly driven from her workplace's underground parking lot to her new home, allowing her to remain out of Michael's reach. As Laura and I implemented these security measures, I could see Michael becoming increasingly irritated. One day, his frustration erupted out of nowhere. Michael insisted that I leave our home to make room for his parents, threatening divorce if I refused. His audacity was astounding, especially since I was responsible for our living expenses, a hefty $2,900 per month. I wondered if he remembered or cared about the fact. As I looked at him incredulously, his patience snapped and he yelled at me to leave so his parents could move in, stunned but determined. I replied, "Fine, but I'm taking everything I bought with me." The moment I agreed to leave, Michael told me to hurry. I wasted no time and contacted a local buyback service to handle the removal of my belongings. When they arrived the following day to evaluate the items, Michael watched, initially smug in his belief that I was simply admitting defeat. His smugness quickly turned to shock when he realized that almost all of the furniture in our apartment was being considered for removal. I paid for the furniture. This upheaval highlighted the deep schism between us, revealing not only a failing marriage, but also a profound misunderstanding and disrespect that had been simmering beneath the surface. As the buyback service removed piece after piece, it represented the dismantling of the life and home we had attempted to create together. After evaluating all of the items in our apartment, except those in Michael's personal room, the staff provided me with a quote. The total value of the furniture and appliances was $30,000. Without hesitation, I signed the document to proceed with the transaction. This decision seemed to bring Michael back to reality, and he grabbed my arm in panic. So why are you selling everything? My parents were supposed to live here. How will they live without furniture? I jerked away from his grasp. What do you mean? We got married. You were so broke after your acting classes that you practically begged me to cover the rent, furniture, and all of our living expenses. I didn't realize you were so broke. I feel duped. I reminded him pointedly of the $2,900 monthly expenses I had been paying. You will now be responsible for covering those expenses, especially since your parents are moving in. It'll probably be even more. Michael's face turned pale, but he quickly tried to regain control. You believed that if you brought up money, I would withdraw from the divorce proceedings. Who do you believe you are? He then made a defensive addition. I've already found a wealthy woman who is processing Michael's revelation about his relationship with a wealthy woman. I began to suspect he was misinterpreting his stalker-like behavior towards Laura as a close relationship. If he thought that closeness was important, he was very mistaken. Laura did indeed come from a wealthy background. Her grandfather was a successful businessman, and her father now runs the family business. Laura was the definition of a perfect heiress. Nevertheless, she never flaunted her wealth. She lived modestly, just like me and our friends, and nobody judged her based on her family's wealth. Given his distorted perception and desperate actions, I began to suspect that Michael had learned about Laura's affluent background and misinterpreted it. This realization added a layer of sadness and irony to the situation, revealing not only the breakdown of our marriage, but also Michael's delusions and deception from the beginning. Michael's belief that Laura would be a better match for him due to her wealth was both absurd and infuriating. Wealth does not determine someone's worth, especially in matters of the heart. Yet Michael appeared to believe it did, a notion that only added to my frustration. I knew Laura would never consider marrying someone like him. She had been with her boyfriend since high school, and he was about to return to the States. They'll probably marry. I informed Michael, who was visibly shocked, that his supposed closeness with Laura was nothing more than a delusion, and that she found his behavior disturbing. But I would always walk Laura home. Michael attempted to justify clinging to any connection he believed he had. You should consider yourself lucky that you were not reported to the police. I shot back. But I didn't realize she had a boyfriend. He's been away. Michael protested weakly. They've been pen pals since elementary school, and they talk almost daily. And unlike you, who has been working part-time jobs, her boyfriend is a successful man, as her father has declared. Emphasizing the stark contrast between him and Laura's boyfriend. As the buyback workers removed the furniture and appliances, Michael tried to regain his composure. I suppose you are all I have left. Your support. My dream of becoming a voice actor is forever, right? He inquired, striking a charming pose. I answered his question with a cold stare. Excuse me, I've already seen a divorce lawyer and begun the process. We communicate through our attorneys from now on. Michael, possibly thinking I still had feelings for him, clung to my waist. Do not say things like that. Haven't we been getting along all this time? He pleaded. Getting along. Ever since you learned about my best friend Laura. As a wealthy heiress, you've grown distant and started hanging out with her, I retorted, emphasizing that his actions were transparent and self-serving. His misguided pursuit of wealth through relationships had destabilized everything. And it was time for me to move forward with him, based on reality and self-respect. It became obvious to me that marrying you was a mistake. Shortly after we exchanged wedding vows, Michael sobbed uncontrollably. His behavior was more like that of a child than a man 4 years my senior. Watching him cry like that only exacerbated my fading feelings for him. I was unable to share a room with him without feeling suffocated. I simply cannot do this anymore, I said, frustrated, in a matter-of-fact tone, and continued. By the way, I spoke with your uncle about our divorce. The person who owns this apartment was renting. Michael's face fell when he realized the gravity of the situation. My uncle. But you know how strict he is, he replied, panic evident in his voice. I responded coolly, considering I've been paying for our rent and living expenses. Your uncle suggested finding you a job when I leave. This means I won't be able to continue my voice acting classes either, Michael mumbled. He rarely practiced, and it seemed futile to continue pursuing something he wasn't fully committed to. Maybe it's time for you to face reality, I added. If you bother Laura again, I won't hesitate to call the police. I warned him sternly with a firm step. I walked out of the house, determined never to return. My initial plan was to move back to my parents' house. But I also considered finding a new place closer to work if the opportunity presented itself. As for Michael, his uncle did indeed find him a job at his company shortly after our separation. Interestingly, Michael's parents, who had been hoping to benefit from their son's marriage to a wealthy family, also moved into the apartment and started working for the uncle. It seemed like opportunism ran in their family. I experienced a feeling of relief after escaping such a harmful environment. Although the age gap had never concerned me, the situation highlighted the significance of selecting my future partner with more caution in a positive turn. After everything had calmed down with Michael, I got a wedding invitation from Laura. She introduced me to her long-term partner, and I truly wish them all the best. Even though my initial marriage was a mistake, I held on to hopes that Laura's marriage would be happy and long-lasting. Here is the next story. My name is Emma. I'm 33 years old, single, and a freelance web designer. Working from home gives me the freedom to create my own schedule, and I've designated a space in my home where I can concentrate on my work. Even though I had a steady income, my parents started meddling in my life about 2 years ago. One day, while I was working at home, my parents unexpectedly arrived. As soon as they stepped inside, they looked around and began talking as if I wasn't even present. Wow! This house is so spacious that it feels like we could live here as well, my mother remarked. My father nodded in agreement. You're correct. There is even a spare room. It seems like a waste for Emma to be living alone in such a large house. Let us move in this weekend without acknowledging me. My parents chose to make this life-changing decision for me. I couldn't let it happen. Hold on. I don't want to live with you guys, I said. My father's face grew red with rage. You took control of this house, claiming it from your uncle as if it were your own. You have reached a new low. I simply had a conversation with Uncle who gave it to me. I explained. Do not attempt to twist the story. Our old house is falling apart, and your mother and I will be moving in here this weekend. That's it, my father declared. The truth is that the house was a gift from my father's brother. My uncle had always spoiled me. Though the ownership was still technically in his name, he had given me complete freedom to use the house however I pleased. Meanwhile, our family home had deteriorated so badly that it required extensive renovations. My mother did not work, and my father's income was low, so they could not afford it. That is why they focused on the house I had inherited. I wasn't thrilled about it, but when my parents sold their home and claimed they had nowhere else to go, I couldn't simply abandon them. I reluctantly agreed to let them move in, but as soon as they got settled in, the sarcastic remarks started. Hey, Emma, are you in your 30s now? Don't you want to settle down and get married? My mother asked. I replied that I am currently satisfied with my job. If you continue to push, you will only drive away potential suitors. Why don't you follow your sister's example? She suggested. Her marriage is not as perfect as it appears, I shot back. But for the time being, I was content with the status quo. My mother, who had been listening in on the conversation, interrupted. To speak ill of your sister like that. Unlike you, she is married and works at a company. I may not be married, I'm doing well at work, but you seem to be always glued to your computer. Are you making money using questionable methods? As for me, I make a living through honest work, so there's no need to worry. How dare you talk back to your mother? You are nothing like your sister. My parents were constantly comparing me to her. Yes, she works for a company, but it's only a temporary office position. I don't mean to belittle temporary jobs, but I definitely earn more than she does. I understand that my parents' generation may not fully understand working from home, but it was still painful to constantly feel underestimated. One day, as I was preparing dinner, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. To my surprise, it was my sister Rose, carrying a large amount of luggage. "Hey, Rose, what's going on? It has been a while." "Emma, this may seem unexpected, but I will be staying here from now on." I was stunned and blurted it out. "What? A large house like this? If Uncle was going to give it away, it should have been me. Wait, comma. Are you moving in today?" I had no idea. "Did Mom and Dad tell you that I got divorced? So sad. So I will rely on you from now on." Rose ignored my shock and went upstairs, claiming an empty room for herself. Despite my efforts to resist, my parents sided with Rose, making me feel powerless. My stress levels rose steadily after that. After her divorce, Rose quit her job and spent her days gossiping about me with our mother. "Hello, Mom. Do you think this dress is cute?" "Oh, absolutely. Rose, you look stunning. It fits you perfectly. Don't you agree? It's clearly not something Kathy would wear. Kathy is more of a simple person, which is probably why she is having trouble finding work. She just stays at home and plays online. Mom, you cannot just say things like that." I thought as I cooked dinner and overheard their conversation. I was tempted to respond, but I realized it would only give them what they wanted. So, despite their comments, I went on with my life without responding. One day, a friend had a litter of 4 puppies, and I decided to adopt one. I named him Muffin. He's a tiny black chihuahua with the cutest round eyes. When he looks at me, his tail wags so hard that it looks like it will fall off. Owning a chihuahua has been a childhood dream of mine. I discovered that working from home can be quite lonely, so I thought Muffin would be the ideal companion moving forward. "Your name is Muffin." "Okay, woof." I did not talk to my family about adopting Muffins beforehand. It is my house, and I will cover all of his expenses, so I didn't see why they would have any objections. However, when I brought the Muffin home, my parents and Rose immediately complained. "We didn't realize you were getting a dog," they said. "That is correct. Dogs can be smelly, as you are aware. My mom added, "I can't stand bad smells. Kathy, how could you bring a dog home without first discussing it with us? We did not agree to this." Rose chimed in. "Regardless of their complaints," I responded firmly. "I did not just pick him up from the street. A friend gave him to me, and I'm responsible for all of his expenses. It is entirely up to me what I have in my home. If you have any complaints, you are free to leave." They were visibly upset and angry at first, but the cuteness of the Muffins won them over after a few hours. They began to shower him with affection. "Aren't you simply adorable? Are you Daddy's or Mommy's boy? Or perhaps Sissy's? Look this way, sweetheart." I couldn't believe the change in their attitude. What happened to their anger just a moment ago? My entire family was completely smitten with Muffins. Their fondness for him reduced their animosity toward me, resulting in relatively peaceful days. Then, one day, an incident occurred while I was out running an errand. My sister called me. "Hello, return home immediately." I was startled by her urgent tone and asked, "What's wrong?" She shouted in frustration. "Muffin made a mess of my clothing." "What if they smell?" I responded. "I will quickly wash them, and they will be fine. Besides, isn't it your fault for leaving your clothes on the ground?" "What? It is my fault." "Your lack of training is to blame," she replied. "Muffin's still a puppy. If you had taken him for a walk, he would not have made a mess at home. You mentioned that you were excited to wake him up today. Did you really take him out?" "I had planned to deal with him later, but since you did not properly train him, you should compensate me for the clothes." My sister was furious when I returned home, as one would expect. My parents were also present, standing alongside Rose and glaring at me. Rose threw the dirty clothes at me and started yelling, "I am going to make you pay for the cleaning." "Got it? Why should I? It's your fault for not taking him for a walk and leaving your clothes on the floor." "Shut up! Stop arguing! This mess happened because you brought this stupid dog home. What are you going to do about it? Calling him a stupid dog? You liked him before? Isn't it a bit harsh to label him that just because of a minor accident? It's your fault for not training him properly. Take responsibility." Why can't my family think beyond their own convenience? I thought, feeling appalled by my sister's selfishness. My parents then intervened. "Hey, Kathy, shouldn't you at least apologize to Rose first?" That's right. They agreed. "All this chaos is because of that muffin you brought home. Can you both just stop already? Puppies are like babies. They make mistakes. Can't you forgive them? Pathetic. This mess is all because of this dumb dog. Kathy, you made the right choice not getting married. If you were a mother, I doubt you'd raise a decent child." "What? How can you say that? If you had taken him for walks and kept the house clean, none of this would have happened. Finally, comma." My sister raised her eyebrow and pointed at me. "I've had enough. I don't want you or this stupid dog here. Get out of this house." "What? Didn't you hear me? I said leave. We don't want a freeloader who works from home here. A freeloader who works from home. How can someone who's unemployed say that? And who do they think is covering the household expenses? It's me." My parents, stunned by my sister's absurd remark, joined in. "That's correct. Emma, leave the house. Your presence only brings us bad fortune. You are a jinx." All three of them insisted I leave. At that point, my rage boiled over. "That is enough. I've had it. If this is how it will be, just wait and see. Driven by a desire for vengeance." I packed my belongings and left the house with a muffin. My sister's accusations only worsened the situation. "This is entirely your fault. If you had simply done what I said, none of this would have occurred." Despite the fact that the consequences were imminent, they continued to underestimate the gravity of their situation. I didn't care. They could handle it on their own. I smirked as I left the house with the muffin. As expected, a few days later, my sister called in a panic. "Kathy, please help. There's something wrong with the house. What is going on in the house? We were suddenly given until the end of the month to move out. So, what is the problem? What do you mean, and what is the problem? Why are we asked to leave? Well, I've decided to sell my house." "What?" Rose's face froze and her voice trembled. "What does this mean? Did you decide to sell it? You do not have the authority to do that." "Actually, I do. The house became mine a month ago." "What?" "Yes, I officially inherited it from my uncle. The title is in my name. Rose, shock came as no surprise. I had never mentioned this to anyone before. You are joking, right? Even if uncle transfers the title to you, you cannot simply sell it. I had my own concerns. But after you told me to leave, I talked to my uncle. He confirmed that the house was now mine. He said, 'Do whatever you want. You should leave that awful family as soon as possible.' That cannot be true." My parents began to protest, regardless of whether they had overheard my conversation with Rose. "Kathy, stop this nonsense. We don't have anywhere else to go if we leave this house. That's correct. It's unthinkable to treat your own family this way. If you're a good daughter, respect your parents. Respect." I questioned quietly. "What exactly are you talking about? You have always preferred Rouse over me. Who do you believe has been supporting you all over the last few years? I reluctantly allowed you to move in with me because you had nowhere else to go." My parents were speechless when they heard my unusually firm tone. Without waiting for a response, I continued, "And he treated me and Muffin as burdens and kicked us out. It was all of you, right? It is shameful to seek happiness by evicting the original occupant. You all belong in hell." My father begged for help after my outburst. "We apologize. I do not care. Figure it out on your own," I snapped, then hung up the phone with a loud click and blocked all family members' contact information. Witnessing me raise my voice, Muffin gave me a worried bark. "I apologize for shouting, Muffin. It's fine now. I will protect you. I'm so glad I was able to rescue you from that abusive family." Later, it appeared that my parents and sister had been forced to leave the house at the last minute, despite their desperate attempts to stay with my father's low income and an unemployed mother and sister. They are unlikely to lead a decent life. Rumor has it that my parents are constantly pressuring my sister to find work. Their family dynamic appears to be deteriorating by the day. Though I am not interested in their situation, it is clear that their living conditions have deteriorated since my departure. It, a classic example of getting what they deserve. They brought it on themselves. Meanwhile, I am enjoying my life with Muffin in a new pet-friendly apartment. I can work whenever I want without anyone complaining, and I can keep my earnings entirely for myself and my dog. I'm extremely satisfied with my life right now. Muffin, Let's go to the dog park today. Woof. Muffin appears more lively. Perhaps it is because the noisy family has left. From now on, I want to protect Muffin for the rest of our lives and live in peace.